Hey guys, it's Hoagie. Welcome back to my channel. I got a haircut. Do you like it? I did it myself. Anyway, today I want to talk about some mental health stuff. I want to talk about my journey with anxiety and how I've been dealing with it ever since I was a little kid up to how I deal with it right now. Anyway, let's get started. When I was a really little kid, like elementary school, like single-digit grades, I didn't really know what it was at the time, but I would have trouble getting out of the car to go to school. I would have trouble getting out of the house to go to school. It might be because I was being bullied. I was bullied all through school, but I would have a hard time being able to get out of the car. Like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to be here. I can't be here. I want to go home. I don't want to leave the house. I want to be at home. And it was awful. I'd be crying. Just be a basket case. And my mom would have to convince me to go to school because, you can't have too many absences. So she would convince me and she would calm me down so that I could go to school. But this happened regularly. This was all the time. This was at least a couple times a month. It was a lot. That's like my first memory of having anxiety was the whole, I can't be going to school right now. I can't do it. And that continued for a very long time. In middle school is when I started presenting with bipolar disorder, and at the same time, my anxiety got worse. I would have panic attacks at school, on field trips, and because I was in the gifted program, I was obsessed with being perfect. I had to have all A's. They had to be A's. I would not tolerate a B. I would beat myself up if I had a B. I had to be perfect. Because if I was perfect, then the teachers would like me. And for many grades, I really didn't have that many actual peer friends. It was, I liked the teachers and they liked me, and nobody else liked me. I was bullied for being smart. I was bullied for being overweight. It was a lot of bullying. And so I figured at least I can get the teachers to like me and the teachers will appreciate me. And I can do that by being perfect. High school was more of the same, more trouble getting out of the car, except because I was older and because I was bigger, my mom couldn't force me to go to school. So oftentimes we wouldn't leave the house, or we would drive all the way to school and I would be there in the drop-off zone and I'd be like, I can't get out of the car. I was like frozen. I couldn't leave. I was so terrified. And a lot of the times I couldn't even tell you why. I couldn't pinpoint why I was so terrified of going to school. And even now I'm not exactly sure what it was, but it was definitely a panic attack. One time I was so terrified of doing a presentation assignment that I had studied for, I had put together a presentation, I just didn't feel ready for it. And I was so terrified that I lied to the nurse about throwing up in the bathroom so that she would send me home. And it worked. I did get to go home that day. And I never told my mom. My mom never knew that I totally faked that sickness. But at the same time, it didn't make me feel much better because the next day I had to do my assignment. And the next day I was still just as terrified because even though I had done my best, I still didn't feel like it was good enough. I felt like I couldn't make it perfect. So I was still terrified of it. So the whole trying to get sent home for a day there was no point to it, but I still felt like I had to do it. I had tied all of my self-worth to my grades. I was getting straight A's, except for my junior year when I was really in it with the bipolar disorder and I started failing some classes, and that made me feel like shit. Like, oh my God, I can't even keep my classes up. What is wrong with me? How awful of a person am I? And it's not, obviously I wasn't a bad person. Obviously my self-worth had nothing to do with my grades, but that's what I tied it to. I had to be perfect. I had to be the best. I had to be the top of the class. I had to get a 5 on the AP Bio exam, which I did. I did get a 5 on the AP Bio exam, and I'm still kind of happy and proud of myself for that. But still, I had to to be perfect. I had to have the teachers like me, because even though I had some friends in high school, they were more friends of exclusion. I think I've explained this in a video before, that we were all the outcasts, so we all hung out with each other, but we didn't really have anything in common. So they didn't really, I mean, they liked me, but they didn't really like me. You know, they weren't friends, they were acquaintances that I hung out with. So to be friends with the teachers was really all I had, because my teachers really appreciated me. My biology teacher thought I was great. He was so proud of me for what I had done in class. He wanted me to succeed in college, and I told him, you know, this is what I want to do with my life. I want to be a biologist, and I still kind of wish that I had pursued biology, but I couldn't do the math. So I wanted everyone, all the teachers, to like me, and for the most part they did, and that's all I needed. That's what I wanted, because I didn't really have any other friends. It wasn't until after my bipolar diagnosis that I got diagnosed with anxiety, because a lot of the time my psychiatrist was like, well, you know, it's probably just the bipolar disorder making you anxious, like whatever. But after I was medicated and after I was becoming stable, my senior year of high school, they're like, oh, he still has stuff going on. Oh, like the medication isn't helping this. So I was put on an antidepressant. I was put on Effexor, which was an experience, because you know, when you start out on antidepressants, sometimes it can affect your gut, because there's a lot of serotonin in your gut, and it backed me up, and I was backed up for like a week, and I ended up in the hospital from cramping, and they're like, oh my gosh, we have to get this out of you. So they took care of it, and it was an experience, but my body eventually got used to it. But still, that was an ordeal for like my first 2 weeks of Effexor. And I was on Effexor for 10 years. It wasn't until like a couple years ago that I went off of it. And the withdrawal symptoms were so bad. Oh my gosh. I titrated off of it very slowly. But I was suffering for 2 weeks. I had shakes. I had palpitations. I had night sweats. I was on edge. It was absolutely horrific. Don't go on Effexor, kids, because you'll never be able to get off of it. I thought college was going to be a whole other animal. I thought there were going to be cliques in college. I thought people were going to judge me in college. And I thought that the assignments would just be a little bit more difficult than high school assignments. And they weren't. They were very, very difficult. And I couldn't handle it. I kind of got frozen in this, I can't finish my assignments the way that I want to do them, so I'm just not going to do them. Like, I didn't feel like I had enough time to do my assignments. I'd always said, like, a lot of my anxiety had to do with not having enough time to make things the way I wanted them to be. And I figured, if I can't do it perfectly, why do it at all? Now, I know that doesn't make sense, but in my brain it made sense. I didn't understand the concept of like getting a B or a C or even a D is so much better than getting a 0. Even getting an F, a 50% is better than getting a 0. But I had to get that A. I had to. No, you don't understand. I had to. And if I couldn't do that, then there was no point in me even trying. It was futile. There was no point. So I just didn't do my assignments. It was mostly English assignments that did this to me. But even my math assignments, it was terrible. I would be on the floor in my room crying, like huddled up in a ball, crying because I knew I was failing. I knew I was gonna fail this class. But I still couldn't do the assignments. I couldn't do them. I couldn't bring myself to do them. And I understood how confusing and how illogical that was. But I still couldn't do it. And I felt so bad. And I was like, I don't know what to do. What I ended up doing is dropping out of college. I withdrew from all my classes so they didn't affect my transcript. And I dropped out after my first semester. My first semester was fall of 2010, and I took a year and a half off to get my shit together. I went to therapy. I learned skills of how to deal with my anxiety. I learned skills on how to study because I had never studied before. I never had to. How do you do that? I learned a lot, and in a year and a half, I felt comfortable enough to get back to school. But in the meantime, in that interim 1.5 years, I got diagnosed not just with anxiety, but with OCD, because I was having, it wasn't just the perfectionism, it was also the intrusive thoughts. I had a lot of intrusive thoughts. They were of sexual nature, about my mother, and I had been having them since I was a teenager, and it disgusted me because I didn't want these thoughts, and I felt like if I was having those thoughts, then that must mean something about me. That must mean that I'm a bad person or I'm a disgusting person. And so I hated myself for years and years. And it wasn't until I went to therapy and I learned that those thoughts are not my fault. Those thoughts are not a reflection of who I am as a person. And it made me feel a lot better. It made me feel like I wasn't a disgusting person, that maybe these thoughts were disgusting, but I wasn't disgusting. It didn't help completely because I was still having those thoughts during the day whenever my mother was around, and it affected my sexuality. It affected how I explored my sexuality because I couldn't stop thinking about those thoughts. So I kind of had to put my sexuality on hold. But later, after I learned, how to control things, how to push those thoughts away, or putting them in a little picture-in-picture and letting them play out, but thinking about something else, that's so helpful. And I was finally able to get rid of those thoughts for the most part. And I don't really have them now. After my mom died, I really haven't had much of any of those thoughts. I do occasionally have intrusive thought dreams where I'm doing things in my dream, but I know that they're not representative of me. I know they're just a bad dream and I'm going to feel nasty when I wake up, but it's not a reflection on me. It's my brain thinking of the worst possible thing and presenting it to me. Thank you so much, brain. After that 1.5 years, I did go back to school. I was still having panic attacks, but I had the skills to manage them to the point where I could finish my work and I could handle getting a B. In fact, I got some C's and I even failed a class one semester. And I was disappointed in myself for that F, but I didn't hate myself. I wasn't so tied up in my grades equal my self-worth. And that was great. It was a much better experience in college when you don't feel like you have to be a perfectionist in order to be worthy of love, to be worthy of respect. But even then, I talked about this in my bipolar video. I had a mental breakdown my very last semester, and it almost prevented me from graduating. I wasn't doing well in my classes. I only had one class worth of credit that I needed in order to graduate, but I wanted to take more classes because I enjoyed being in school. School is fun. I like learning, but it was just getting too much. It was so much. I was preparing for graduation. I was putting together a comic convention, and it was so much that I just shut down. I was like, I can't do anything. This is it. This is the end. I'm never going to graduate. But I graduated, and I have my bachelor's degree, so suck it. After college, these last few years, I've changed my medication. I went off the Effexor and onto Wellbutrin, which has been doing a great job. And I'm better now. My anxiety still happens all the time. I'm still not really having panic attacks, but having anxiety attacks where I can't think of anything but what I'm worried about. And it's not the best. It's not like I'm cured or anything. Obviously, I'm not cured of anxiety. I'm going to have it for the rest of my life. But it's manageable. And The only thing that I really deal with now is car anxiety, which is like I'm in the passenger seat and I'm convinced that we're going to crash. I'm convinced that someone's going to hit us, that the person who's driving is going too fast. They're not braking quickly enough. And like, I will be like there holding the bar, and I will just be like freaking out, and I'll like close my eyes, and I need to keep my eyes on the road because I'm going to be driving eventually. I'm going to get my permit again. I'm going to get my license. But I can't handle most of the stuff that's like happening on the road. And I don't know where it came from. It showed up after my parents died, but my parents didn't die in a car accident or anything. So it might be like referred anxiety. I don't know. But it's been really bad. And I'm still working on it. But that's the majority of my current anxiety. Thank you for watching this longish video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please consider liking and subscribing. I put out new videos every Wednesday and Saturday. Thank you again. I will talk to you guys later. Mwah.